You're listening to WZRD Chicago, 88.3 FM, and I've got Janet Kuypers in the studio with me. She's on mic 4, and
I have to figure out where I am in this world.
Janet, welcome. Nice to see you.
It's wonderful to see you.
Yeah. So what's new?
Well, I've been working, as a literary magazine editor and been publishing books for so long.
Yes.
But recently, in the past 3 years, I would say, CyberWit.net has approached me about publishing my books.
Oh, nice.
And the first book they did was a collection book of some of my better well-known pieces. And then last year, during Women's History Month, they released this book called Shattering the Glass Ceiling.
Gorgeous. Yeah,
and,
it's beautiful.
That has translations of poems and poetry sections on all sorts of different themes of all sorts of different women's issues. And I released that, and I did a feature with Beach Poets last year when I came to town.
Yes.
But that was right about the time that the Dobbs v. Jackson ruling came, which pretty much overturned Roe v. Wade. And because I know, and for some people in Illinois, they might not think it's that big of a deal.
Well, because in Illinois it doesn't impact us as much as it does in people in other states.
Like the state that a job moved me to in Austin, Texas.
Yes.
And driving through, I'd go to Arkansas, and it's, what is going on is so terrible. And I'm sitting here not knowing what to do, so Journalism Janet went into hyper mode with writing. And CyberWit released a book called Testament. It comes in 4 parts. The first part is all post-Roe v. Wade poetry, all women's rights poetry, that kind of thing. And the second one is all about dealing with life and death issues, people who are, considering or who have committed suicide.
Oh, yeah.
And then part 3 of it is poetry reflected of the first book in the Old Testament, Genesis, and the last section is 3 poems from the last book of the New Testament, from Revelations. But those 3 Revelations poems really do tie in with being able to have control of your own rights and kind of tying back together to the post-Roe v. Wade women's rights stuff at the end of the book. So I've been going around, since the Roe v. Wade poetry is over half of the book, part 1, I've been sharing those poems with people in features across the country, and I'm honored to do it here.
Yay. And you said you had a couple new pieces too.
A few I'd like to share with you that I haven't shared in Chicago at all, and I joke because I said Journalism Janet going into I was a journalism major in college, and it's funny that this first one is actually called Journalisming the Story of Equal Rights.
Oh, nice. So you're listening to Janet Kuypers?
And this is a poem from Testament called Journalisming the Story of Equal Rights. Poetry, copy editing, and proofreading seem to take half of my workday, reviewing other people's essays, correcting spelling and punctuation, removing spaces at the ends of paragraphs, mostly technical stuff. But after reading an essay talking about how the 29th Amendment should be created after a number of states have passed and many anti-abortion laws about after the overturning of Roe v. Wade to help women who are in need and who need assistance, who are impoverished and in more restrictive states, to help them to get to free states so that they can exercise rights that the government does not have the right to take away. This essay ended stating that the 28th Amendment, of course, is the Equal Rights Amendment. The journalist in me went into overdrive because I had to confirm that the U.S. government, even Wikipedia, although having equal rights seems like a splendid idea, the total number of U.S. amendments to the Constitution is only 27. I had to tell them to correct their copy, and the only change they made is that the 28th Amendment should be the Equal Rights Amendment. I question if that's all that needs to change, though, because the Equal Rights Amendment, introduced to the U.S. government nearly a century ago in 1923, failed to pass. The ERA was reintroduced in 1971, passing the House and Senate, but then they went to the state legislature for ratification, where it was rejected by a few states and was never passed. In the new millennium, even this very decade, the one that saw the overturning of Roe v. Wade and the states taking women's rights away, that decade, the House Judiciary Resolution 28 does propose, quote, an amendment to the Constitution of the United States to equal rights for men and women. But again, equality for women is something still yet to pass. So, reading this letter to the editor for future publication, I questioned the essay, wondering if it misses the point. If there was any chance for equal rights for women in the United States, then their rights wouldn't have been removed by select conservative men in government in the first place. If anyone ever truly wanted to codify equality for women, it would have been done long ago, but we wouldn't be in this pit mankind has thrown us into now, if as we furiously claw our way back to the light.
Yes, yes,
And I get applause on the radio.
Yeah, that's right. You betcha.
That's because you're double plus awesome. Double plus awesome.
That's because you are. So tell me, you have a gig tonight. People can see you.
Yes, I just recently did a feature, a whole poetry night at the Gallery Cabaret, which was where I did my poetry open mic. It started at the cafe. We actually started at Cafe Aloha and bounced around, but I took it over at the cafe. That building has shut down, and just when I saw this past month, it was actually torn down. It was so sad. It was so sad to see, but I had to go and check it out anyway on Lincoln Avenue. But I moved the open mic to the Gallery Cabaret. And so it was Cafe Gallery at the Gallery Cabaret, and just Wednesday we had a whole night there because Wes Hine, musician-wise known as Cousin Bones, Wesley Hine was doing a monthly poetry open mic there, so we were both taking care of that and having a lot of fun and doing a lot of poetry there on Wednesday. But tonight I get to have a bonus week at Tangible Books. Vittorio Carli is the host of this monthly thing, and he put in a bonus week with myself and Dave Getchik, who took over my open mic when I had to move to Texas, and Jerry Pendergast, who is a great regular that had been at my poetry open mic for so long.
Brilliant. He's such a brilliant writer.
And so the three of us are features there, and a bonus week tonight at Tangible Books. If I have the addresses, it's the 3000 block of South Halsted in Bridgeport, which I think we learned is where the most mayors of Chicago have been from.
Yes, the dailies,
So,
the Daily Show.
So we'll be there before I am taking off to get on the road again.
It's a really nice bookstore. The bookstore is awesome. Tangible Books.
I'm looking forward to it. I've got a dress in the car. I'm ready to go.
Nice.
I'll be all set to lambaste people about women's rights.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
I'm trying to pick out the nicest things I could so that I wouldn't sound as assaultive when I'm doing this feature tonight. But yeah, so I feel like I've been having an overload of just saying one after another. And in fact, when I did a show in get a load of this in Hot Springs, Arkansas, I decided to dress and carry a statue, and I said I went as Justice, and I had a little Statue of Liberty on one side, and of course it was outweighed by soldiers on the other side, making a statement right there. But then I said, but I'm having trouble, achieving justice when I'm having to wear this coat, and I had a shawl of like 15 wire hangers on.
Ooh, okay.
So the whole half-hour show, I've got all these wire hangers on me, and I'm like, no, and it was in Arkansas.
Right, which is so square.
Well, and of course, I'm going to a place where you're sharing poetry and people are like-minded. I think I even wrote a poem like that a while ago. I'm like, it's all nice and cushy when you can go and say something to people who agree with you.
Right, you're preaching to the choir.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. It's like, how do you go and make a difference and get out there for people who might not believe the way you do?
Right, yeah.
But it's a matter of, well, throughout the whole thing I've been talking about, they are doing these things about saving embryos, and oftentimes they are, no larger than half of a paper clip in size, and this is what they're trying to preserve, but they have no regard for women whom they are subjugating, and then they have no regard for the children once they're born.
Supporting the
how
babies.
many people are in foster care? How many children?
Right.
I mean, and you have no respect for actual living beings, but you are using this argument to further repress women.
Right.
Oh, there I am getting on my soapbox.
No, I'm with you. I'm so with you.
So I had made the joke about journalism and Janet, so I might as well share one more that relates to that for a poem for you. And it's called Kerning, Ballots, and Women's Rights. Graphic artists, with typesetting as one of the begrudgingly used tools, don't expect to hear their jargon during women's rights court battles. But it's beginning to look a lot like Republicans will use any means to stop women and all the people from fighting for their stolen rights. Here's the scoop. Approaching 750,000 people signed an abortion rights petition for a vote, but word spacing, a term that we graphic artists and typographers call kerning, is now the sticking point Republicans claim in their reason that this critical issue can't be on the ballot. Really? Word spacing. That's the reason you anti-abortion, anti-women's rights Republicans use? There isn't enough liquor to drink that would make me believe this is your true excuse. It's beginning to sound a lot like desperation on your part to stop your unfair edicts from being questioned by rationality. It's beginning to feel a lot like tyranny when a select few make what they call laws to restrict the world, and we're supposed to just take it with no questions asked. Are we a dictatorship? Are we a self-perpetuating autocracy in which the working classes have no say? Well, the state of Michigan may try shrugging off the will of the people, but battles pushed this to court. Emergency complaints were filed with the state Supreme Court. If type was unreadable, then why did so many read and sign the petition? Courts believed, on this exact day that I scribed these words, that yes, the words were there, and they should be read by all who have the right to vote. It's beginning to sound a lot like more of the same from people who don't have the evidence to support their arguments. So they sing a song of a side story so that they can avoid talking about the real issue. Listen, we've been talking about it all along. You just haven't listened.
That's true. So true. So true.
And it seems strange that I was just going through one after another, and that seemed to be the only thing that I was writing throughout all of 2022 and the second half of it, and filtering other pieces. And there were so many pieces when, if you're going to support reason and science, this should never have happened. And it's so frightening how so many states had trigger laws that would just snap into effect the moment that Roe v. Wade was overturned, to try to push back and push for more anti-abortion laws for people. So it's frightening, because the Second Amendment they'll cling to, which there is great value in for, being able to protect yourselves from a government gone wrong or from the world that we're in right now. But it seems with this legislation, they are killing people, not through abortion, not with their precious guns, but with the stroke of a pen by saying, we're going to suppress you even further.
Yes.
There's always a way to do it, and
Yes.
they'll find any angle they can.
Yes, yes, so true.
Good
so
times.
true. Any angle.
Any angle whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I had one poem here that I'm like, it's way too long. I'm not going to read it, but I would give the gist of it for you, and it was called Quickly Washing Away Women's Rights. And it started with me seeing, I watched tennis, and I would get so aggravated by seeing professional tennis players from Russia. And they would have lived in the United States since they were toddlers so they could become good players. Or they would move to Monaco, and so maybe they can split up their stuff so they wouldn't have to give so much money to their government, but they love their Russia so much, and I just think, how dare you? I mean, I know people who had left, who had changed their name, who got citizenship to renounce Russia because there are so many things about Russia that is not good, so I get so aggravated when I see people, I win a competition, so I'll write something on the glass for the audience to see, and it will say peace. Like that is the only thing that they can say about what's happening with Russia against Ukraine. And maybe they can't say any more, or else they'd get in trouble.
Right.
But then at the same time, I think, well, why are you even supporting them in the first place? How dare you?
Yeah.
But then I think, well, I'm sitting here in Texas, and why don't I just leave?
Right.
And,
Yes.
well,
yes.
but at the same time, it's maybe I just don't understand, and it's not that easy. So what can I do to make a positive change for things? And I would see people with banners and protesting, and I have a stack of them in this poem, and they would say things like, you know, don't mess with Texas women. I'm tired of holding this sign since the 60s, or, you know, and going on and on.
Yes.
I think one of them was something to the effect of, I don't know you, and this might sound crazy, but a clump of cells is not a baby. And there were so many signs, you know, prohibition, that, you know, making laws like this is the same thing they tried to do with prohibition, and that didn't work. So what are you doing? You know,
Right.
but there's so many people that are still protesting, and what else can you do? And how, you know, if you stand on the street and you're the loudest voice in the forest, will any legislators actually listen?
Right.
So
Yeah, but they're supposed to represent you.
supposed to.
And they're supposed to be concerned about the common good.
And what do they define as the common good?
Yeah,
What?
and it's definitely a top-down approach.
Yeah. I think the end.
Right.
I think the last verse. I don't even know this long poem with all these things goes on, but it says in the end of that poem. But if there is this many people who feel this strongly, this reassures me and makes me wonder if protests at times like this really do lead to change, and maybe just the right words from every person in every way they can this time can come from all, no matter how big or small, to get the repressive mentality out of the dark ages. None of us are sure just how long it took to get this giant step backward, but I think we all agree that it's time to move forward again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly.
Yeah. So your reading tonight is at 7?
7 to 9 o'clock, I am the featured reader of, it's probably 25 to 30 minutes for my reading.
Uh-huh.
And I'll be reading things that you haven't heard in Chicago
Ooh.
because there are so many pieces in
Sure.
this book. So
It's nice. It's beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, really nicely bound. Both books are really gorgeous.
Yeah, it was fun. You know, this was a niche inside the customs building in New Orleans that I just decided to stand in once in a
Nice.
suit.
Okay.
And because of glass ceiling, you're looking at this other book here. The Austin Public Library has a glass walkway that you can walk over, and I just said, you know, on a whim, let's just take pictures at this, and I've got a hammer in my hand, like how to keep going forward and try to do anything you can to work positively for change.
Yeah, positive change.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And when you're pushed
Yes,
back,
I'm with you. So much pushback.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've experienced some really serious bullying myself at places that I never expected that to happen, where we had agreements that were totally different than what was done. But that's a radio show for another day. But I get it. Shattering that glass ceiling is so important. And your work is so seminal. I really enjoy your work, and it's really gut-wrenching and important, and I definitely hear the journalist in you.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was a journalism major, but my specialty was graphic design, so I designed books.
Oh,
and, you know,
beautiful.
so
Nice.
a lot of people, when they go to college, are like, I don't know what I want to do yet, blah, blah, blah. At least back in the day, it was a lot more that way. I don't know about the kids for now, but when I was like, I'm going to journalism because I write all the time, and I would be writing about issues, even about the arts, and about what would happen with, you know, the school that I was going to at the University of Illinois. But at the same time, when I took one class on graphic design, and everybody was like, oh, this is terrible, all these radar types, and I'm like working on outlining and defining fonts and doing, I'm like, I think I found what I want to do with my life. I think I found it right there. And so I've just been focused on that. And that is why probably when I write poetry, that it comes off, which I've never tried to set them into paragraphs just to make it a story, because my writing is so straightforward, and that I'm looking for teaching people things or giving as much information as I can. Journalism, Janet.
Yes.
So it probably comes off that way, but that's what happens when you're trying to give people a lot of information to plead your case.
Yes, isn't it true?
I do whatever I can for it, however it might help. I have no idea, but I try.
Yes, that's all we can do.
Yeah.
Is keep putting one foot in front of the other one and making some noise about what all is going on right now. And I don't know. I'm a big believer in the power of the pen.
Yeah.
You know, I believe that the pen is mightier than the sword.
Yep.
So right on, Janet.
Well, I hope it's enough. And if anybody wants any copies of the book Testament, they can get it through Amazon. It's not through my own press, so
it's not.
It's
so you have to go to,
yeah.
I hate saying even that word.
Well, you know, because oftentimes I've got books and I'm publishing them through Scars Publications, which runs two magazines. But this is through another press. However, I do have copies.
Could they find it at CyberWit?
Yes, you can find it there as well. And if
I would mention CyberWit before
Yes.
I mention that other one.
Okay, I hear you. They have links on their own page to it, and if you go to janetkuypers.com, if you know how to spell it.
Oh, yes. Spell it for us, will you please?
It's JANETKUYPERS. Kuypers like Siler. You know, I look at streets and like, I know because I'm Dutch how to pronounce that. But if you go to janetkuypers.com, there's actually a big old link to Testament.
Oh, good.
And that will give you a link to being able to order the book, the link for CyberWit as well, and a full listing of all of the writing that is within the book, as well as underneath the titles of the poems where they have been published or where they've been performed live.
Ooh, where they've been performed live. Wow, that's really keeping good documentation.
So actually, when I get back and do some research, if I've got video of this, I will have links to WZRD performances underneath those things on that page as well. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff there, and you can find details about it and receive those poems there online as well. So
wow, nice. Yeah. You're so dramatic too, and beautiful. I really love watching you perform, and I love your work.
And you say beautiful, and I always say I've got a voice for radio.
You do. You do have a voice for radio. You absolutely do.
I do my best.
So shall we hear some more work?
Yes, well, I can give you a sneak. Well, what do I find? I'll find something.
So you also host a Zoom poetry reading.
It was funny because I think when I did a book release at the Gallery Cabaret, which I believe there might be some people in this room that got a business card that said poetic license, because that's just a funny idea. I've got poetic license.
Yes, I love it. I love it.
And I decided to, when I was taking over an open mic in Austin at a bookstore, to call it poetic license. Well, when the pandemic hit, they shut that down, and the bookstore said, we don't want to do that anymore. And so, because the pandemic had started, I had started doing it as a Zoom meeting with Zoom host John F. McMullen. And it is the first Sunday of every month, and it still goes on. And every once in a while I get people like Vito or Lynn West used to come, and Dave Getcha came a couple times. Dan Weinberg came. But then there were people from my literary magazines that had published me, and there were people that John, the Zoom host, would know, or people would see it. And it's so funny now to say, well, I've got a Facebook event listing page so you can find the Zoom meeting to attend, and it is from 3:30 to 5:30 p.m. Central Standard Time on the first Sunday of every month. Oh, wait, for the people in England who come, that's 10:30, and for the people in Greece, that's 11:30, and the people in Malaysia, that's 5:30 the next morning.
Oh my goodness!
But yeah, so
you really have to keep track of everybody. That's tough.
I try to do what I can.
How many people come? My goodness! All over the world, people.
Sometimes there are as few as 7. But sometimes there are 15, and it's just round robin poetry. There's no feature because we just try to give everybody a chance to share, especially when so many people are around the world.
Yes.
And then some people say, well, I'm going to have to go to bed. So we put you on early, and we can do a second round before you leave or whatnot. So you know, we are as accommodating as we can be. People ask about swearing and stuff. Like, well, I know we can see that there are no children, but I kind of like to keep it to the sense of if we were in a bookstore, children might be around, G to PG. You know, and obviously no racist, sexist, homophobic, of course, duh. But that's all in the fine print. Which, whatever.
Yeah, you want to keep things, I mean, like FCC guidelines, basically.
Something to that effect.
I think that's smart.
I don't know how much time we have.
About 12 minutes.
Oh, okay. Well, then why don't I do the first poem that I did as the feature at the Gallery Cabaret.
Oh, that'd be great.
And just because it's here and I can share that with you, and it's from the book Testament, and it is titled Evil of What They've Done. When women are not treated as equals, when women make less pay per dollar than any man, and are still stunted from advancement in the workplace, I suppose it's not hard to believe that suppressing women's health care is also such an insurmountable task. After the religious right, usually male, in the often more rural half of this united nation, use their interpretations of their religious dogma to push women back to the Dark Ages by overturning legislation that has existed for all of my sentient life, they removed women's choices and, in turn, placed so many people, health-wise, in such grave danger. We women felt a cushy kind of comfort knowing that Roe v. Wade was on our side. Not even Democrats pushed on to make our rights more legal, more permanent than a single Supreme Court decision. And now that the religious right, usually male in the often more rural half of this united nation, push women back to the Dark Ages, politicians and policymakers now work furiously, even across party lines, to codify Roe. Now, a bipartisan bill has been made, sponsored by Republicans and Democrat senators, that, in order to be agreeable, was so vague that it doesn't uphold anything. Abortion rights groups hate it, and the nitpicking battle over every technical phrase in this bill makes the message in this bill lost to the average American. I think of my husband now, who once said, and I quote, "There is no task so simple that it cannot be made impossible through the actions of a bureaucracy." Because this is exactly what this is, the inability of the U.S. government to accomplish anything for women. Even if the Kaine-Collins bill never passes, Senator Kaine still holds great fear. "I think life post-Dobbs is a series of tragedies," he says, for he may fear, like me, that it may take too many medical tragedies against full-grown women before our lawmakers realize the evil of what they've done and correct the mistakes they've made to women. A series of tragedies makes me think of how back in the day, and still, I'm sure, there would be what now seems to be one mass shooting from one crazed male almost every week.
Yeah.
People protested wanting something radical passed into law, but there were never 60 votes, so nothing changed. Apparently, after one tragedy too many, the Senate decided to move, passing a gun bill one day after the overturning of Roe v. Wade. But don't worry, tragedy is never far away when it comes to guns and more restrictive laws. Violent killings are still up, and daily shootings are still reign supreme around my hometown too. So, whether change is eventually made in the laws for women or not, all prospects scream that no matter what happens, it looks like we're in this fight for the long haul. It may take more than a miracle for women to be truly treated equally by mankind. Since, well, I don't believe in miracles, we'll all just keep fighting until something like women's health care isn't so insurmountable after all.
Oh,
I know. I mean, what are you gonna do? Can I get applause in our radio studio?
you keep on.
keep on. So anyway, that was the first, and in that show I actually did something about like the Nazi approach to women's rights, because the women weren't considered anything, and in fact in Hitler's last years or whatever, when he feared that he was being poisoned, he had a rotation of 11 Aryan, of course, young women, that had to eat with him and taste his food before he would, because it might be poisoned. But keep the conversation light while you're having a meal. Don't say anything to contradict his megalomaniacal views. And these women were fearing for their safety, and he, although would care for Aryan women, that's okay if somebody died and saved him. But then again, at the same time, they would have, whatever we have to do, we have to increase our German stock and have all sorts of babies, even ones out of wedlock. And so there were things to stop people from having abortions starting, and then, which actually stayed on the books through 4 terms of Angela Merkel until it was finally overturned for their repressive acts toward women in Germany as well. So yeah, I'm writing all these things and be like, yeah, we always need to have some, Nazi perspective. Suppressing women as well.
Right.
Well, I mean, you see things in so many different angles everywhere, so.
Yeah. Well, women across the globe
Exactly.
just so cast to the side.
Yeah.
And it's historic. I mean, it's.
I think I was saying things about, Israel and France that were, putting more things into their constitutions to protect women's rights instead of, supporting abortions. And I was just thinking, well, no, I'm no Gal Gadot. I'm no Wonder Woman, but we're all becoming that in order to be able to try to fight for our own rights.
We have to
Exactly.
fight for our own rights.
Exactly, so.
I understand that abortion has gone up by like 76% in the state of Illinois since the overturning of Roe versus Wade.
Because people are coming here because
Yes.
there aren't, and that's so charming. I don't know what else to say to that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not as if you want to be having abortions because
No.
nobody thinks that it is something that this is something I'm happy-go-lucky with. It's a very serious decision, but it is always made in the best interest of living, breathing people, and taking away those rights is something that I don't understand why we can allow this in our government. It just kills me.
Yes.
I'm sorry that I react this way. I'm just breaking down.
Yes,
What
yes.
do you do? So-
Yes, well, they got into power, and it's who we elect. We really need to pay attention to what's going on as voters.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying.
And do our research and vote for people who will protect our rights and serve our own best interests.
Yeah, and it was, I even wrote in poetry, I'm like, I don't want to tell people how to vote. Oh, should I switch this one time and vote for Democrat? I can't tell you that one issue like that is reason enough to do that. And I don't like to tell people, kind of like Queen Elizabeth, who recently passed away. I don't want to tell people what they should and shouldn't do, but all I can do is hand you evidence and help, see if you can learn from it and make the most informed decision that you possibly can.
Well, clearly you do a lot of research with your writing. I can hear it in your writing.
Yes, they sound like reports for school.
Some of your,
It's
like
quite-
you did the periodic table of elements.
I did.
You did, yes.
And in fact, and this wasn't one of the poems that is in this book was quoting Neil deGrasse Tyson, and I did this at my last open mic, and I'm like, actually, and I'm wearing this shirt that looks like, what is this?
Planets.
But the contraption of
that's,
metal balls.
Yeah, that's
It's a picture of that, but each of the metal balls is a planet, and there's motion that Pluto is with strings are cut and it's being lost from
flying off.
flying off. And I even said, and I'm going to give you a quote from Neil deGrasse Tyson. Actually, he's the person that was in the big support of getting rid of Pluto as a planet. Well, I mean, understanding the science of it, because it is a Kuiper Belt object that is out there, and it has a number of things that don't make it a planet, and if that is a planet, then you've got tens of thousands of other larger things than
Right.
Pluto that would also be planets.
Sure.
And I don't think any child is ready to remember that many names.
Sure. Yeah. Gotcha.
But yeah, the quote from him was something in one of my poems was something to the effect of, actually most abortions happen in the first month of a woman's pregnancy and they don't even know it because it never survived and it just passed through. So people who want to say that life begins at conception, that means there are so many women who, unbeknownst to them, are mass killers, and there's not even a scientist that can prove that they did it.
Right. Right.
So it's just a matter of trying to understand the science and work with that. I mean, science is not necessarily perfect, and there are things like the Big Bang Theory. It is just a theory. Dark matter is just a theory, but we work to get more and more evidence for things and learn from them, and hopefully that will end up pushing us in the right direction eventually.
It will, and your poetry certainly does help. I really love how you just never stop, Janet. Your beautiful writing, and I'm so glad that you don't. I mean, it's really important.
Sometimes when an issue comes up like that, it's like, well, you can't stop.
No.
You can't.
Right.
I mean, I remember I went to a Beach Poets feature and I was doing things for Shattering the Glass Ceiling, and the host from Beach Post had one wire hanger to put on. It's
Ah!
This is my contribution to it. Well, since then I've done a feature where I'm wearing a coat of wire hangers
That's cool.
on a shelf.
Good idea.
But and so I was like, well, I'm not going to bring that for these shows in Chicago, but
Yeah, you don't need to here. It's not as visceral.
and that's the thing. I don't think people in Illinois think about it as much because it isn't that much of an issue. So I mean, it was fun doing it, and it was only in Zoom meetings for open mics when I'm in Texas, but doing the big shows in Arkansas, that was that I wore that and I did that.
So
in
what
Arkansas.
other performances do you have lined up besides this evening? I mean, I'm not talking like locally necessarily in Chicago, but do you have any anything else that you're doing? I know you're so busy.
I've been doing them all this week, and that's why I did stuff in Chicago, and then the last month I did Beach Poets, and I did another one there in that last month as well. But a lot of my stuff for this live stuff for this book will be ending tonight before I'm traveling to go do other stuff. But I do have my monthly open mic where I'm usually sharing something from Testament.
Sure.
And in fact, the last 2 months I've been sharing things from Shattering the Glass Ceiling as well.
Nice.
And that's at the Poetic License Open Mic. And if anybody ever wanted to go to the Zoom meeting for it, just look up for Poetic License, and there will monthly, the week before, everyone will show up a Facebook page, or contact me via email, and I can get you onto a list if you want to know about
what
it.
email would you send it to?
Well, I spelled my name already, Janet Kuypers at gmail.com.
Yeah, okay.
So,
It's
simply
gmail.
enough, that's the easiest
Good.
way to do it. So.
Yes, wonderful.
Thank you.
Well,
and
thank
thank you.
you.
No, we're just doing thank you back and forth. No, thank you. Thank
I really
you so much.
appreciate your time, and
I
know
appreciate the
your feature's gonna rock it.
I appreciate
It's
the
gonna rock
opportunity.
it tonight.
Thank you very
Yes,
much.
yes, absolutely.
And yay, Chicago. I
Yes.
can get that out. I miss my Chicago. So thanks, you guys are
we
double plus
miss you
awesome.
too.
Oh, thank you for everything, and keep fight. And to everybody else, keep fighting the good fight, and know that you're not alone. And we will get through this all together, no matter how long it takes before we can get some legislators out of the dark ages.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
Wouldn't that be a pleasant
that'd be really
idea?
Great. Yeah, I think we need to. Well, people need to vote. It's just like the bottom line. People need to vote across and really pay attention to what the issues are.
I think on Equal Rights Day, President Biden was like, vote. That's the only way that we're going to change this. And I'm like, how do I hear this message from the president on Women's Right to Vote Day actually happening? And that's where you hear it loudly from our government as well. So.
Yes, certainly. I'm sorry. I'm like
That's okay.
grabbing my
You've
PSA
got so much
book.
work.
I got to read the public service announcements and then run to the Wizard meeting. But thank you so much for being here. And please come out and see Janet tonight. Pick up a copy of her book. Check her out, her YouTube channel. She is so prolific and wonderful. And thank you again for coming out.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay,
Thanks.
you're listening to WZRD Chicago, 88.3 FM.